Most people drift through their lives half asleep. They blame circumstances, they blame timing, they blame other people's indifference. But beneath all of that noise lies a reality so sharp, it cuts the ego cleanly in two. Nothing outside of us is responsible for who we become. The world is chaotic. It has always been. Yet some rise with discipline and clarity while others collapse into resentment. The difference is not luck. It is not talent. It is governance of the inner world. We wake each morning into a battlefield that few are trained to recognize. The battle is not against co-workers, rivals, or critics. It is against impulse, against wounded pride, against the craving to be validated and the fear of being ignored. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, wrote Marcus Aurelius. This is not poetic encouragement. It is a command. If we accept it fully, our excuses evaporate. The brutal reality is this: growth accelerates the moment we stop negotiating with our weaknesses. The world does not slow down for our self-pity. Time does not pause because we feel misunderstood. We either govern ourselves or we are governed by emotion. There is no neutral ground. And once we see this clearly, reclaiming our power becomes less about motivation and more about responsibility. 1. Accept the indifference of the world. The first shock to the ego is understanding that the world does not owe us fairness. It does not owe us recognition. It does not owe us comfort. Seneca warned that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Much of our anguish comes from expecting the world to align with our preferences. When it refuses, we call it injustice. But what if the indifference of the world is not cruelty, only neutrality? The sun rises on the disciplined and the undisciplined alike. Opportunity appears to the prepared and the distracted alike. What separates outcomes is not cosmic favoritism, but readiness. Once we internalize this, resentment loses its fuel. We grow faster than others the moment we stop taking things personally. An unanswered message is not an insult. A missed promotion is not a personal vendetta from the universe. These are events. Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. If we master reaction, we master trajectory. Each morning, then, we practice detachment. We remind ourselves that today may bring criticism, delay, inconvenience. Marcus Aurelius prepared himself for this daily, expecting interference and ignorance from others. Not because he was pessimistic, but because he refused to be surprised by reality. When we expect difficulty, we are not shaken by it. And when we are not shaken, we conserve energy. That energy becomes fuel for growth instead of being wasted on outrage. To accept indifference is not to become cold, it is to become steady. And steadiness is the soil where power grows. 2. Govern the inner dialogue. The next brutal truth is that most people are not defeated by circumstances, but by the voice inside their own head. That whisper that says, "You are behind. You are not enough." They are ahead. Left unchallenged, that voice becomes a tyrant. We cannot silence it by force. We must out-reason it. Marcus Aurelius wrote his private reflections not to impress anyone, but to correct himself. He understood that the mind must be trained daily, like a blade sharpened against resistance. When anger arises, we interrogate it. Is this helping us act with clarity? When envy arises, we question it. Does another person's success diminish our capacity? When fear arises, we examine it. Is this a real threat or merely discomfort? Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by events, but by our judgments about them. That is the lever. Judgment. If we alter judgment, emotion shifts. And if emotion shifts, behavior follows. Each morning, we rehearse better thoughts, not delusions of grandeur, but disciplined truths. I control effort. I control response. I control integrity. Over time, this becomes reflex, and reflex becomes character. Those who master their inner dialogue move with unusual speed through adversity. They do not waste months drowning in narratives that weaken them. They correct course immediately. 3. Voluntary discomfort as training comfort is seductive. It promises safety while quietly dulling our edge. The brutal reality is that growth requires friction. Without resistance, there is no strengthening of will. Seneca practiced voluntary discomfort, fasting, cold, simplicity, not because he romanticized suffering, but because he refused to be enslaved by luxury. If we cannot endure minor discomfort willingly, how will we endure major hardship when it arrives uninvited? Each morning we choose something difficult, rising earlier than necessary, finishing the workout when fatigue whispers, "Enough." Having the hard conversation we would rather postpone. These acts are not dramatic, but they accumulate. Modern scholars of resilience echo this ancient principle. Stress, when chosen and measured, builds capacity. It is not stress itself that destroys us, but our unpreparedness for it. When we train ourselves to endure discomfort calmly, fear loses its authority. We begin to trust ourselves, and self-trust is a form of power few ever cultivate. Growth accelerates because we no longer avoid what strengthens us. 4. Radical ownership of time. Time is the only currency that cannot be replenished. Yet we spend it casually, as though tomorrow is guaranteed. Seneca called it the one possession we are most careless with, despite its value exceeding all others. The brutal truth is that distraction is self-inflicted poverty. Hours vanish into trivialities. Days dissolve into scrolling, gossip, comparison. And then we wonder why progress feels slow. Each morning, we confront this fact. Today is finite. We decide what deserves our attention before the world decides for us. We protect our focus as a sacred resource. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that he could leave life at any moment. This was not morbidity, it was urgency. When we internalize mortality, trivial arguments shrink, petty grievances lose weight. We begin asking better questions. Is this action aligned with who we claim to be becoming? If not, why are we doing it? When we guard time fiercely, momentum builds. Weeks compound, years transform, and growth that once seemed distant becomes inevitable. 5. Discipline. Over emotion. Emotion is powerful, but it is not sovereign. We are not obligated to obey every surge of anger, lust, or despair. The brutal reality is that unchecked emotion delays our evolution. Marcus Aurelius urged himself to respond with reason, not impulse. This does not mean suppressing feeling. It means pausing long enough to choose the higher action. When someone disrespects us, we resist the urge to retaliate blindly. When temptation appears, we measure it against long-term vision. When disappointment strikes, we refuse dramatic narratives. We ask, what would the strongest version of us do right now? Then we act accordingly, even if it feels unnatural at first. Over time, discipline becomes instinct. Emotion still arises, but it no longer commands. It informs, and then it yields to judgment. Those who master this rise rapidly. They do not sabotage progress through emotional volatility. They remain steady where others unravel. 6. Service to something greater. Finally, growth accelerates when we stop centering everything around ourselves. The ego craves recognition, but lasting power comes from alignment with purpose beyond personal gain. Marcus Aurelius saw himself as part of a larger whole, a citizen of humanity. When we adopt this perspective, our struggles become meaningful. Our discipline becomes contribution. We rise each morning not merely to improve status, but to refine character so that our presence strengthens others. We aim to be reliable, just, courageous, calm. When purpose extends beyond self, endurance multiplies. We withstand setbacks because the mission matters more than comfort. And in that alignment, something profound happens. We feel less fragile. Criticism stings less. Failure instructs more. We realize that reclaiming our power was never about dominance over others. It was about sovereignty over self. The brutal reality is liberating. No one is coming to rescue us. No applause is guaranteed. No fairness is promised. But within us exists a domain untouched by chaos, our judgment, our will, our character. If we govern that domain relentlessly, growth becomes inevitable. And while others drift in reaction, we move forward with intention. This is how we rise faster, not through shortcuts, not through noise, but through disciplined mastery of the one territory that has always been ours.